The California Association for Local Economic Development, in partnership with the California Academy for Economic Development, is pleased to share this case study on leadership, collaboration, and preparedness. Lessons learned from the Sonoma Complex fires. Thanks to a generous grant from the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration, we are able to promote model practices in economic development resilience, not only for communities, as you will learn from this panel, but also for businesses as supported by Outsmart Disaster, the state of California's business resiliency tool managed by the California Office of the Small Business Advocate.
We're going to be joined this morning by Supervisor James Gore, who is from the 4th District, and he's been there for a little over 10 years. He left high school and went right to being a supervisor. Thank you. And then a little bit about him. If you don't know Supervisor Gore, he's the incoming president for the National Association of Counties. He's also the past president for the California State Association of Counties. So very involved, not just from the local level in terms of leadership, but also from the state and national level, making sure that the policies that, the organizations are fighting for really do support local government, specifically counties, but we know that flows down to cities as well. The supervisor has become a well-known champion for resiliency after leading the community through an unprecedented barrage of fires, floods, and drought, and engaging and empowering residents through recovery and rebuilding in the wake of disasters. Again, we're really fortunate to have the supervisor join us, as well as this amazing panel who he's going to introduce. So if you'll please join me in welcoming him to the stage.
Morning, everybody. Woo! Good morning, everybody. Bios are always so interesting, aren't they? Outside of bios, headshots are interesting. I see this one in front of me. It's like I'm staring at myself, and I'm like, geez. But I always joke. I love individuals who have headshots that are like 20 years old. So when you meet them at the conference after you've seen their bio in a book, like, was that your son? Is that your daughter? Bill, what happened last year? Did those disasters change you? It's a pleasure to be here with you all. It's a pleasure to have you in Sonoma County. It's a pleasure to have you at this location. Choosing this location is really unique because you're able to walk around Santa Rosa. You're able to enjoy this area, Railroad Square, Courthouse Square, all of these. I want to thank Jeff, who sits on the city council. A lot of work in Santa Rosa to make sure that this is a live-work place of a nexus that we move through. I appreciate, Gerbax, the having everybody here, and Ethan and his work with us over the years, Marcos. We're one of these funny communities. We have been at the nexus of so many kind of crazy things. And yet at the same time, I really think that we all share this. We live in very turbulent times. We live in chaotic times. If there's anything that unites all of us, it's that the unknown seems to be really what is most paramount in our lives every day. That can be seen as a challenge, or it can be seen as an opportunity. And if you work in business and if you work in the economic sector, you know that choice between challenge and victimhood versus opportunity and rise up is really what makes businesses and economies thrive. My wife is way cooler than I am. Okay, so I have a chance not just to be in government, but also work with somebody. She's the founder of a group called Hello Alice that now supports 1.5 million small businesses around this country with access to capital, with a machine learning backbone that actually drives resources to small and medium-sized businesses, predominantly what they call the new majority, women-owned, veteran-owned, BIPOC businesses, but open to everybody. I learned through her work each and every day that things like micro grants of $5,000 to $15,000 makes huge differences. And that many times the individuals who don't have access to capital, it's not because they were bad at credit, they never had an opportunity to create credit. That they never had an opportunity to do that where they grew up in a persistent poverty area that doesn't have nonprofits, that doesn't have enough of a property tax base to have a functional local government, that doesn't have an economic development area, that doesn't have good institutions around it. So this is a big part of our world going forward. So I really want to thank you from wherever you're from, as I saw outside, whether you're from a big area or whether you're toting a sticker that says it's happening in Soledad, right, is for what you do. Going to introduce these amazing individuals, but I also want to honor the fact that having been the president of California counties and now the incoming president of the national counties and on the FEMA National Advisory Council, those are not about positions. Those are about what you do with that stuff. So for those of you who are on boards, those of you who are on commissions, those of you on ad hocs, you know, you come to be together, yes, for best practices, yes, for learning, yes, for strategy, which can include programs you create or lobbying initiatives, but you also do it for what I call not just networking, but professional therapy. Because we all need to be together, right? More and more every day I realize that we all need to be together to be able to share about our world with people who know what we do, but who aren't up in our business every day, because it's fiery where we work, right? In the trenches. So, what does that mean? Well, we're here to talk about a very important subject. So just overall, cities and counties, a third of the counties in the United States, a third of the 3,069 counties, parishes, and boroughs in the United States face a presidentially declared disaster each year. The list of billion-dollar disasters plus continues to rise. Part of it is what we call climate or weather whiplash or climate extremes. And a part of it is because we have just grown into areas where the flooding persists and we continue to grow, right? We go into the wild-urban interface and we continue to grow. And that is a part of life. That is a part of risk. That is a part of where you lean forward. Before I go in, I just want to give a plug for Mitote Food Park. Al Lerma running it, Marcos inviting you all. This is not a simple food truck. This is a food park that is in a thriving area of Roseland, a redevelopment area in the city itself. It's full of initiatives to try and help that rise. But I think, as you all know, if you really get into the joy of this work, you find that there is joy in these areas. It's not just an area of blight and shadows and darkness that you have to invest in. This is about joy and being a part of it. It is a magical place. So I hope you join them tonight. So just want to do some introductions. First of all, I'll start here. I won't go in order. I'm going to start with how it's laid out in front of me. So raise your hand. Ethan Brown. Anybody know Ethan? Okay, Ethan is, yeah. Come on, bring it. Woo! Ethan is our executive director of the Sonoma County Economic Development Board. Ethan's been through all of this. I also want to give a shout out to Jeff Duvall. Come on. Boom. How many of you have a chance to applaud? How many of you know your director of emergency services in your county? Okay? Take that as a challenge to go meet that person. Make sure that you are connected with what happens, not only with exercises, but when there's a disaster, and the EOC, which is the... Emergency Operations Center. See? I knew that. Emergency Operations Center has a connection to the community, to the economic community, because you might not be deciding on the disaster, but you're going to need to know what decisions are being made about evacuations and others so that you can be the conduit to the business community. I also want to introduce Mr. Jeff Okrepke. Okay? Jeff Okrepke is a Santa Rosa City Council member. Jeff is, it says here, and yes, he works for George Peterson Insurance. Jeff was, ground zero. His home burnt down in Coffee Park, and he really drove the creation of something called Coffee Strong, which was not just a nonprofit, it was a community initiative to really create the leverage and the force necessary for the homeowners in that area to have a force in what they were going to do going forward. And they were driving towards what needed to happen with the city and others to support a just recovery. Brad Sherwood right here. Come on, Brad. Brad Sherwood. Brad Sherwood. Brad Sherwood is my brother in arms. Brad is Sonoma Water, so he can talk from a utility perspective of what it's like to manage an operation, manage big business. He's the assistant general manager of Sonoma Water. You know, we have tons of employees. We manage water systems and sanitation and flood control. But Brad's also another fire, not victim, not just survivor, but thriver. Brad really was a part of a block captain movement that's kind of similar to Coffee Strong, and what Brad really did was he rose up with other members in the community in an unincorporated area that I represent. And it is, to me, the epitome of Build Back Better. It is not just rebuilt. It is rebuilt with infrastructure, with utilities, with other things that is a true example of better from chaos. So these are the amazing people who are going to share with you today. So I'm going to go through some questions. I'm not going to expect that everybody respond to every question. We don't want this to be ad nauseum. We don't want this to be in different areas. Just want to do a time check right now. How long are we until, how long do we have? 15 minutes. Oh shit, 15 minutes? Oh, you're in for it. Thank you so much, Scrivax, for your time here today. We'll slow it off a little bit. Okay, so with this being said, we're going to go through. I'm going to really try to make sure that we have 15 minutes at the end for some Q&A. Or at the same time, as I'm going through, don't wait until the end. Try to ask a question. Try to ask something relevant. If you also want to stand up and just share a thought, I'd ask you to keep it to a minute or less if you want to share a thought. We like testimonies, but we don't like proselytizing, right? But let's try and make this as interactive as possible. But I want each individual, even though I introduce them, to take 2 minutes maximum and go through and introduce yourself and any high-level stuff that you want to go over. So I'm going to start with the man with the mic, Brad Sherwood.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's kind of weird not to be able to see that side of the room. So Brad Sherwood, Assistant General Manager at Sonoma County Water Agency. We are a wholesale water supplier to 600,000 residents in portions of Sonoma and Marin counties. We also provide sewer sanitation service to 9 different sanitation zones throughout Sonoma County. Our governing board of directors, we are a special district. Our governing board of directors are the Board of Supervisors of Sonoma County. So Supervisor James Gore sits on our board of directors. So he makes the policy. It's our job to administer it. And sometimes we like to make the policy but think he's making it, but then we administer it. It's a fun game we have. And I say that because part of the theme here in this talk is leadership. And as a wildfire survivor, we lost our home in 2017 Tubbs Fire. We literally had a minute to get out of our house. We got both our cars out. We were able to get out safely. Unfortunately, many in our neighborhood were not. So we all had an internal goal in our hearts to rebuild better. Yes, we were able to rebuild our house, and we currently are in that rebuilt house. About 98% of our neighborhood is rebuilt. But it was in our heart, it's in our faith to rebuild better for those lives lost and ensure that we can't stop a wildfire from happening, but damn it, we can be better prepared, and we can do so through leadership and collaboration. So I'm going to put my Sonoma Water hat on real quick. So as an administrator of a public agency, we listened to where our leaders wanted to go with the rebuild. They provided the policy direction for staff to implement collaboration and change. We are an unincorporated community. We do not have a city council. We adhere to the unincorporated rules and laws. We work with our county transportation department, public utilities department, permits, Sonoma, to make change happen. I say that because it wasn't just like we were able to connect 200 homes that were once on septic onto a new sewer system in a matter of 2 years. That wasn't just done by Sonoma Water. That was done through collaboration of every county department in Sonoma. That was done through leadership at our board of directors level. I volunteer with a group called After the Fire USA, and Jeff and I travel the nation working with different communities who've gone through these kind of wildfires before. My God, I'm just supposed to introduce myself, I just realized. Like, man, I get rolling. Damn, I'm sorry. Stop me if you want me to stop.
Keep going. Say it. Say it. Speak your truth. Testify.
If you, sorry. Bottom line is, and then I'm going to hand the mic over to Jeff. Leadership is just so important. No. I tell James Gore all the time, man, we are so thankful. I want to say lucky, but thankful to have the right leader representing District 4 where the Tubbs fire ripped through. He was there at the right time, the right place, because he led the whole way. No one asked him to lead. So many other communities in the country, their wildfire survivors have to ask for leadership. It is up to all of us as citizens and voters to put leaders in the right spot, to be prepared for emergencies. And I say that with my private citizen hat on, and also my Sonoma Water hat on as an administrator of a public agency. So with that, I'm going to introduce Mr. Jeff Okrepke, who is like a brother of mine. We didn't know each other really well before the fire, and now, yeah, we know each other too well now.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
And they say electeds talk too much. My name's Jeff Okrepke. I'm on Santa Rosa City Council right now. Thank you all for being here this week. This is awesome. I really want to find out where you're going on the culinary crawl. And again, I'm also going to plug Matote. Fantastic event.
I hear the
area.
culinary crawl is not sold out and that it has extra space in it, is what I was told.
Well,
for us. I'm joking.
If you're not on the official culinary crawl, there's definitely some other places you can go that are damn good. On October 7th, 2017, I was a nobody. I was just a dude who was renting his house in a community called Coffee Park with his wife and his about to be 2-year-old son. 24 hours later, my house had burned down, along with 1,300 of my neighbors' houses and 5,000 other structures within the county. And as you can imagine, you have no idea what to do in that situation. I mean, they talk about it looking like a war zone, and that doesn't do it justice, especially when you have an avid hunter who lives across the street and all of his rounds cooked off and there's shells in the street. It really looked like a war zone. And it was a very difficult experience. But as James alluded to, for some reason I felt like I had to do something, and I gathered people at the Santa Rosa JC to kind of give them an idea of what building back is going to look like. I knew some people in government, I knew some people in construction, I knew some people in insurance, and I had one meeting. I thought, I did my good deed for the community. And the next day, someone sent me a message like, when's the next meeting? And then another person, and then another person. That's when I learned, oh, when I raise my hand, I can't really put it back down at this point. So we ended up being the first meeting event held at the Luther Burbank Center, which is our event center north of here. And it ended up being me and James laying on the stage with a giant map of Coffee Park, carving it up into districts, into areas. And that created our block captain system, our area captain system, and we fought for everything. Whether it was county level, state level, federal level, with the United States Postal Service, which you think is federal level, but it's not really, but it kind of is, but it's super dysfunctional, even more so than you think it is. And then I ended up with After the Fire, and touring the U.S., Boulder, Colorado, Redding, Paradise, Santa Cruz, areas like that. And me and Brad joked that our experience, and James as well, our experience is like, people are like, wow, you guys are experts at this. And it's like, yeah, that's like saying you're the best quarterback to never win a Super Bowl. Like, you don't really want that title. Like, thank you that you think I'm good at this, but like, I'd rather like not be good at it. After that, the mayor of Santa Rosa at the time appointed me to planning commission, and unbeknownst to me, that was the first part of his plan for me. And then about 8 months later, I found out his plan was to have me succeed him on city council. And after some consultation with loved ones and friends, decided to run. And now I sit on Santa Rosa City Council, and I'm a member of the Economic Development Subcommittee for us, and I'm happy to be here this morning.
Yeah, good job.
When you're on a panel with these two, give a little more thought as to where you sit, because I don't really know how to follow that up. Ethan Brown, I am the Executive Director of the Sonoma County Economic Development Board. We are a county agency here charged with service to the unincorporated areas primarily and partnerships with our local city partners. I've been there for about 12 years in various roles. At the time of the fires, I had just moved into our business retention and expansion position. I had exactly 0 working days between that decision at work and the start of the fires. So there was a very steep learning curve for me. However, I'm very fortunate that the Economic Development Board is an all-hands-on-deck type organization. And at the time, there were at least a dozen, likely more, of us just kind of working together on what needed to be done. I'll go later on into this talk about our level of preparation, but you know, our executive director had also lost his home and was unavailable. This is a time before we had VPN, before we had laptops, before we had any sort of technology that allowed us to work remotely. We physically had to come into the office and have a powwow and figure out how we got going on this. So what I will go into here today is really a deeper dive on all of that. But we did what we do as economic developers. We went out and surveyed the business community. What are your immediate needs? There were a variety of effects that folks were experiencing and impacts that they were experiencing. We learned how to work with the SBA and FEMA and leverage their resources. We built amazing new partnerships and strengthened partnerships that we had created before. So a lot to learn from our experience, and I'm really glad to be up here today.
Good job, Ethan.
So good morning, I'm Jeff Duvall, Director for the Sonoma County Department of Emergency Management. My story is a little different. I came up in June of 2019 for the formation of the new department as the Deputy Director. Walking in June of 2019, it was, let's build a new department, but this department needs to be different. We need to take a look at where we've come from 2017, where we're going, but more importantly, take a look at the disasters that we have coming for us and what does that mean. It meant taking a look at our preparedness phases. How do we engage the entire community? Both rebuilding trust, rebuilding collaborations and partnerships. Little did we know that a very short time later, from June, that was going to be tested over and over and over, which led to the 2019 Kincaid fire. My department is tasked with all the emergency preparedness, planning, training, and exercise for the county government and for the county unincorporated. We are the county unincorporated's emergency management team. At the same time, we also wear a dual hat, and that is that we are the operational area coordinator. So we are also that go-between between the state government of CalOES, California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, and the 9 incorporated cities, 2 higher educations, countless special districts, and also our tribal nations here in the county.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, I want to start this with a question, and then I'm going to come to Ethan, is because I think, one of the first things is know your audience, right? Not just speak what we want to speak in our experiences, but so how many of you are involved in economic development in your communities? Okay, if you're not raising your hand, I'm happy to see you. I don't know, are you here to talk septic policy or, which is economic development in its own way, I guess. So how many of you represent or work jointly, let's say, as a city department? How many of you as a county department or paid, like really affiliated with a county, not just loosely? And so how many of you are the in-between, right? Regional, private, public, like different areas, how they fuse together? Okay. One of the things that I would ask is that how many of you think that you're within the this is a tough question to ask, but are within the top, during a disaster, you're in the top concern level, right? Or even in mitigation. You are one of the top 3 things that come up. Economic development, right? So let me reframe. It's tough to understand that question, but what I'm getting to is that one of the biggest problems that I have seen in our disasters, and that's why I'm going to go over to Ethan first and foremost, is everybody takes economy for granted in local government. I'm just going to make a huge generalized statement about it. It's like, oh, the economy's doing good. Oh, that must be good because we're doing all these policies. The economy's doing bad. We should do something, but I don't know what we should do. Right? It's in an area, it's assumed that it happens. And an economy is an ecosystem, as we all know, but it's not just players, it's who are the people who are driving the life movement within an ecosystem is what you all do. One of the biggest issues that I saw from a failing is that we took that economy and economic driving and discussion for granted. And so that's what I want to uncover a little bit with talking to Ethan is he and I have talked for years about what it means to have a robust and action-oriented economic development board that actually can drive the agenda when it gets into these moments, not just report back on the impacts of it. So Ethan, I want you to just share the best you can on that note, and we'll get into some of the examples of economy and how that really was affected by the fire itself and other fires.
Okay, thank you for that question. In my opening, I talked about partnerships, and I think a lot of times we automatically frame that as I'm a partner with my local chamber, I'm partner with the local cities, I'm partner with those who understand economic development. We work with the EDA or we work with the SBA. We're talking to our peers in economic development. But I think what Supervisor Gore is getting at is that, especially as a county organization, we have 29 different departments, and most of them are active in response. And they have sometimes a narrow focus. And rightly so, at the beginning, in the very response to an emergency, they're focused on the safety and the wellness of the community. I see opportunities at that very beginning for economic developers to really kind of step back and say, who are my partners that I might not usually work with, and how can I help them understand what interventions could be taken right now to better affect economic development outcomes, right? How do we put ourselves in a better place to rebuild, not only just get back what we had, but as you've heard earlier, build back better? How can I help them understand what businesses are going to need while they're primarily focused on the basic needs of the residents at the same time? So that's ongoing work. It's not easy. We weren't anywhere near that space in 2017, and it's continued work even after COVID now, where we've seen additional areas for opportunity and improvement would be a nice way to put that, I guess.
And I'll add one bit, which is a part of our re-envisioning of the Economic Development Board that Ethan's really taken on with his team, with Marcos and others, is how do we make this department relevant structurally, not just in conversations? Because we can all talk about nice things, but when in the middle of a pandemic, if a county medical officer, health officer, dictates and throws out a shutdown decree, have we even consulted to talk about the impact on businesses, number one? Number two, have we understood what that really means? Number three, have we even given businesses the opportunity to say, if you did it this way instead of that way, it would land a lot better and it would work a lot better. The tough thing in government, and this is where I want to go over to Jeff right now, Duval, is that during disasters, in both the preparedness, the management, and the recovery, you hear the same thing over and over again, which is, we got it. And the community oftentimes looks back and says, wait, you said we, but you didn't include me. The we is too damn small, right? It's way too small. Are you certified? Did you do a planning? Did you get just-in-time training? Oh, you can't be involved. Oh, the churches can't be involved even though they have all the shelter space. Oh, because we didn't do preparatory meetings. Oh, businesses, you're just going to have to kind of work around the edges with really very little information and really very little input. So, Jeff, I want you to, I'd really love for you to talk in a different way about you know, what this kind of idea of an emergency operations center and a recovery as a bunker or a nexus from a government perspective.
Great points there. And that's a lot of what we've been working on since 2019. It's taking a look at how we've done emergency management in all of our 5 phases of preparedness, response, recovery, mitigation, and education and outreach to our community. And really stepping back in the preparedness phase and going, who is our community? We walked in 2019 of a community that was trying to rebuild, trying to come back, both personally and economically. What was happening in 2019 was this new phenomenon of public safety power shutoffs, and nobody knew how large those were going to be. My first week on the job, it's kind of a funny story. My director took the week off and kind of left a note on my desk and said, "Look forward to talking to you when I get back." And Sam Wallace, who's my deputy director now, walked in and said, "Hey, let me ask you a question. What do you know about public safety power shutoffs?" And I said, "I know some. I kind of dealt with that in my previous." He goes, "Come on in the conference room. We're going to have a call right now with PG&E. We may have one this week." And I remember looking at the map of the projection of what was going to get turned off in the county. And all I could think of is how many homes, how many businesses, what is the impact? And little did I know that kind of set the stage moving forward of what my team was going to spend the next 3 to 4 months working on. Part of that preparedness phase was looking at our community. How do we engage the economic and our commercial side, prepare small businesses? We came up with something that we use in government. Who here has heard of a continuity of operation plan? We took some of those, we took some of those concepts and went to our small businesses and said, "Hey, here's the impact of public safety power shutoffs. Are you prepared? Do you have a plan? Take a look at this," and armed them with documents. Little did we know that was going to help them a year later during COVID. But going back to what the supervisor said, we really sat down and looked at our EOC, our Emergency Operations Center, and who was in there. And we immediately said, we have people missing. We have voices missing. We have all 29 of our departments and special agencies here in the county represented, but what about our community? Our communities, our co-ed community organizations active in disasters, we brought them in. They have a seat in our Emergency Operations Center. All of our nonprofit organizations, that is our voice. We're hearing what's going on and we're able to lean on them and get information back. Faith-based has a seat in our Emergency Operations Center, and so does Sonoma County Tourism.
And tribes.
And our tribal government,
tourism.
yes.
So think about the structural changes that you make. It's just like, hey, when hits the fan and everything happens and there's only a certain amount of people that are invited to a room, you can still be in that room and not have to be the deciding factor, but you can always be the one who says, hey, this is the impact, this is what's going on. What we're trying to do is get best practices so that when you go home, you request, you say, hey, when you speak to Department of Emergency Management, you speak to a county health officer, you go speak to health. Because whether it's the pandemic, whether it's the fire, whether it's the evacuation, whether it's the flood, or whatever it is, I want to get back to this point again, is that economic development operators, managers are oftentimes left on the sideline, and it's like, hey, business just has to kind of scurry to fit around life, safety, structure protection, FEMA reimbursements, and all these other things as opposed to driving it, which is a huge liability. I'm going to come in a minute to Jeff and Brad, but I want to follow up on one question to Ethan, which is, so Ethan, in a community where, while we're focusing on the 2017 fires, and while you all have had discussions around the pandemic, we are in a community sitting right here where we have had, I think by last count, 10 presidentially declared disasters in 6.5 years right now. What's that?
Everything but locusts.
Yeah, we're waiting for the locusts, as Jeff says. So we're ready, we're resilient. So what is it like for the business sector to go through that, where you all of a sudden are saying repeat disasters, insurance, everything, employees, let's just say even things like the wine industry because of the threat of fires, tourism in the fall, which used to be the glory time during harvest, is gone. You have to completely switch with a tourism board and its marketing and hospitality and other things to spring into other areas. And also tell people, you don't have to fear coming here. So just can you get into this repeat disaster kind of world a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, you can probably imagine it's a grind, right? There was a certain momentum. There's a certain momentum, energy, unity, and synergy that carries you through that first one. It's like, wow, holy shit, I can't believe this happened. We're going to survive, and we're going to band together.
Yeah.
And then it happens, something like that happens again. And then it happens another 8 more times. And every time it happens, it takes a chunk from the community and it takes a chunk from the businesses. And the resources that are available don't always match up to what's needed, right? Not throwing any shade at those resources, but by the time around even your third, let alone your 8th, 9th, or 10th disaster, businesses don't want an idle loan from the SBA.
Exactly.
You know, they want a grant. A large chunk of their workforce is now gone. They've left the area. They left the state. You know, your partnerships can weaken if you're not careful. Your staff will burn out if you're not careful and taking care of their needs. So you know, it's difficult. It takes a certain level of perseverance. And we go back to leadership. It takes inspiring leadership. It takes folks in your community who you can look up to and say, I'm doing this because I want to. How do I even put this? Because I'm inspired by these folks, right? I'm here to serve my community. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. For businesses, though, you know, it's simple math for them. No matter how inspiring you are or not, you know, they have to be able to make payroll. They have to be able to fulfill contracts, and they have to be able to survive here, and that can be difficult. I think we're very fortunate here to have, you know, I use the word partnerships a lot, whether it's with our local cities, whether it's with the SBDC, our local lenders, our board of supervisors. We've been able to come up with creative solutions over time that include grant programs, that include specialized trainings for workforce, that include resources that go directly to community members that are struggling. And it takes, I mean, multifaceted isn't even a really good word for it. It's infinity faceted, right?
Yeah. Well, how do you, as an economic development board, support businesses in that chaos? Is it information? Is it mostly the programs? What have you seen that's most in need from individuals? A call.
Yeah, I could generalize and say it's going to be information, right? And it's going to be different for everything, but mostly, you know, most recently with the pandemic, there was so much information coming, and it was such a dynamic situation that changed essentially every day. And something would come from the state level. This is now how you're supposed to operate. You're closed, but you're not. You're, you know, it just everybody's situation was different and how quickly it was changing. And our staff found its place at that point in digesting that information and sort of putting it back out there in a much easier format to read and to take in. And we used our local partners as a megaphone for that information. We pulled together groups, industry groups, to help them understand how things affected them, to get feedback from them in the case that it could be useful as we worked with our state and local partners. So those are, I would say, yeah, definitely, if you're going to speak in general, that getting that information out is a core focus for economic development here.
So we've talked a lot about the disruption and the chaos, and this is kind of a transition point, I think, that I want to take our panel through, which is what did we do that ended up responding in a way that drove business, that took these challenges and this chaos and changed it from, as we say, victimhood. One fire survivor came to our board and said, you know, I'm in the transition of going from being a victim to a survivor to a thriver. And I want you all to know that you're not in a community that's just been hit by 9 disasters presidentially declared, which doesn't include the power shutoffs, which doesn't include, you know, all these other things that we're doing, but a community that is thriving, that has the most jobs in the history of Sonoma County occupied at this point after this chaos. And that's because the business sector during and after the fires completely changed. So what I'd love is maybe Jeff to start. We talked a little bit earlier about this. is actually the cleanup and the immediate recovery. We oftentimes talk about this thing called the disaster industrial complex, like the military industrial complex. You have a presidentially declared disasters, these parachutes come in, all these people want to help you, consultants, people want to clean up your everything, but how good did we do or not good on directing that into local resources and hire and other things like that? And what were the issues that you saw? And I'll take you all the way over to like the spreadsheet of the like how early were you working on recovery?
The next day?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it's when it comes to the mental health of fire survivors, if you don't keep yourself busy, you're going to wallow in the sadness and depression of what just happened. And it's a spiral that unfortunately some people it took to the extreme. But there was a lot of people that myself a little bit, Brad a little bit, a lot of people that we know that were just like, all right, let's get into this. How do we fix this? How do we build back better, so to speak, or build back quickly? That's the first thing that people want is like, I want to get home. I want to get home. Because when you have to think about it is, imagine you moved out of your house to a new place, and then your entire neighborhood moved, but to all across the country. I had neighbors in Maine, New Mexico, Hawaii, so communication was an issue. But in terms of the disaster industrial complex, the issue we ran into was we were the first mega fire, like mega fire. And we were the first major wildfire since, was it Scripps Ranch in San Diego, like 15 years earlier, but was not even close to in scale. And so it became an issue where nobody knew what to do. And when I say nobody, that includes the local, state, and federal governments. So the reaction by FEMA and the federal government is like, oh, we'll treat this like Katrina, like a flood. And it is not the same, because one of the major issues is you have homeowners who have insurance, right? In Katrina, you're dealing with people who are in a flood, and most people don't have flood insurance. So all these homeowners are expecting to come back. They're expecting to get a payout in insurance to build their homes back. And that expectation leads to being very aware of what's going on and how things are done. And we had contractors coming in from out of state. They call them prime contractors and then subcontractors through the Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA. They were like, oh yeah, we're just gonna come in, we're gonna move all this stuff, and we're gonna go and we're gonna bring in our workers that we do from Arkansas or Florida or Texas. Which is fine until you realize the culture and expectations of California government, labor, and employers of, no, we don't accept federal minimum wage. We expect you to pay a living wage in our community to people in our community. And we have resources here. We may be 50 miles from San Francisco, but that doesn't mean we don't have people that can build roads, bridges, tunnels, and move dirt. We have those here. Last night, James and I were at a dinner with that industry association. And so we really made it clear from a governmental level and from a ground level of homeowners, like, no, we want our neighbors, because some of these people who are moving this dirt were people who lost their homes. Coffee Park is very middle class, about 40% renters, long-term renters. Long-term renters are not bank CEOs and surgeons. They're police officers, construction workers, plumbers, nurses, teachers. And so we had expectations of being treated fairly, of being, and of helping the people around us. And so that is what we fought for. And they listened to us. It did not go over well at the federal level in terms of the bidding process, and there were some breakdowns and some infighting at the federal level. But I don't care. We employed our people. We got our lots cleaned, and we got to rebuild. And that's what we care about. And we did it while not taking advantage of a workforce, which I think is huge. And then if you want to go even further to, what was the second part you wanted me to cover? The rebuild, the contractors, the general contractors, not just the engineering contractors. So the general contractors, we want to know who was out there. And we interviewed GCs, What's your cost per square foot? Have you ever built homes before? How can you
When
scale?
he says we, you're talking about full community forums where somebody would come out and it's like imagine a group like this of fire survivors with a builder there. So you put them on and say like, who's going to give me the biggest, the best price per square foot? Oh, wait a minute. Are you all including my garage and the square footage? I mean, the level of detail and acumen that the groups got around managing insurance to contractors and other things was really amazingly impressive from a business sense.
Yeah, and then one of the things that we really did in collaboration with our local government, with the city of Santa Rosa, is we talked about rolling back regulation. I don't know if you guys know this, California tends to be a highly regulated area. But we talked about rolling back local regulations to what they were before. So a lot of these homes built in the late 80s, early 90s had 5-foot setbacks on the second story, but now they're 10-foot setbacks by code. Well, you're talking about taking square footage away from homeowners.
Yeah.
That did not go over well. So we collaborated with the local government to help rebuild, one of the big things in terms of Build Back Better and workforce housing is streamlining and reducing the cost of ADUs. So my community is about 1,300 homes-ish, 99% rebuilt, but we have more actual housing than we did before, even though there's still bare lots because of ADUs and duplexes. And that is a major thing that I take pride in, is that we have more housing than we ever had, and it's multi-generational, it's workforce housing, and we're allowing people to build generational wealth through this.
I think it's, I'm going to go to Brad here in a second because, and I think, yes, it's the story of the houses, but a little bit more is the public infrastructure. So, and I'll let you tell the story, but I would dare to say that the Mark West Larkfield Wickiup community, because it was an unincorporated community. How many of you work with unincorporated communities, right? It's an amazing hodgepodge, right? Because sometimes when the developments came in the 70s, the 50s, the 80s or whatever, the county required curb and gutter, but then there was nobody to maintain it long term. So sometimes it goes back in. Sometimes you have roads dilapidated. Sometimes you have septic systems in the middle of residential neighborhoods, right, causing water issues. And it's just because of the fact that they never became full cities and owned their cityhood. It's this weird relationship with the county, and the county has to represent everybody, so sometimes it doesn't work right. Brad represents one of these areas that is truly, as I've said, the epitome of Build Back Better. So can you talk a little bit about the public works projects, because these are economies, right? These are the kind of things that are the economy of recovery and rebuild, because as much as there's a disruption, you have to steer your individuals, and the amount of companies, maybe you guys can speak to this, that were created out of these disasters here in our community where people pivoted is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, one of your silent first responders are your public utility systems and staffers. A lot of people don't realize that. So when you go back home, definitely look and talk to your emergency operations center managers and ensure that you incorporate your public utility staff. That's water and wastewater.
3 minutes.
3 minutes. What we did in Sonoma County, we had 200 homes that burnt down. They were all in septic tanks. We were able to, through an innovative loan program, connect those folks to an existing sewer system that literally ran not even a half mile from that neighborhood that was built in the 1960s. We did that at a time when folks didn't even know if they had enough money to rebuild their home. How the heck am I going to spend $75,000 to connect to a sewer system when I can just probably rebuild my septic tank and just build back the way it was? We were able to offer a loan finance program to those folks to where for 10 years they don't pay a dime, 20 years they pay 2.5% on their ability to connect to this new sewer system. Guess what that allowed? Economic development. It allowed people who could not rebuild larger than a 3-bedroom, now they could put a 4-bedroom or a 5-bedroom in an ADU on their lot. To Jeff's point, it increased the ability for neighbors and folks to age at home. We now have folks in their 80s and 90s who are living in their attached ADU units, and their kids have moved in since the fire. It's allowed for affordable housing, renters, income to come in. It's allowed for small businesses to actually come in. So don't when disaster happens, turn over every stone you got, utilize every resource you got, because it's amazing what a little septic to sewer conversion program can do for your community.
So one of the, to elevate that is, as Brad's talked about, in this area, we went back with sewer. That was a big project. And every one of these things was fiery and chaotic. And imagine a room like this where individuals are like, yes, because I want to rebuild an ADU. And then there's a group of 5 people who are like, hell no, absolutely not. I don't want your sewer. Like, everything is so emotional, right? I don't want your sewer. You're going to force me to connect to it. I'm like, doesn't say on the bottom line, right? Everything, the emotions run high, but also in this community, we've gone back. We have 2 parks that are in development that were not there before. We have sidewalks along a major thoroughfare that those communities were able to go through. We have community walls and fences to block off traffic. So the tough thing is when people are going through absolute grief, is to follow them. As much as some of them have said, like, I was a leader, I was a follower as a leader. That's, I think, what a lot of leaders don't do. They don't go and really get ground truth and say, this is what's needed and how we go forward. We met with this block captain network every week on Wednesday at 6:30 a.m. for years. We brought in FEMA, we brought in SBA, Small Business Administration, Post Office, others. Coffee Strong, because it was more focused on the city for recovery, moved into its own world, and it had 1,300, but we kept doing it with the unincorporated communities. It's amazing what magic can happen if you just get together with people and bring the resources and empower the conversation and put the pressure on, because there was a lot of pressure that changed the way it would have happened to pro forma. We have about 8 minutes. It says 10 up here, but you're telling me 8, so I'll follow you. You're the boss. I do want to ask Gerbax or anybody else if you want to steer us into anything, because I definitely have a final kind of 3 minutes, but I would like to go ahead. Please introduce yourself, too.
So Greg Foster from Humboldt County, California.
Yeah.
The disaster capital of California in some ways. You mentioned really quickly, and I sit on the board, the formation board, and the new board of the COAD.
Yeah.
You kind of threw out that really quick, but we're forming one, or have one now. Talk a little bit about what COAD is, if you could, just for a second.
So yes, community organizations active in disasters. Talk about a powerful group. Think about all your nonprofits, your community groups, and bringing those resources to the table for you during your emergencies. Not even during emergencies, just during regular blue sky like today. And to be able to have needs in the community and be able to go over to them and go, hey, we have this need, can you help us? But and vice versa, what are you hearing from the community? 2023 floods that we had last year were a great example of the COAD sitting in our EOC, giving us information, we're giving them information, and we're connecting with community that necessarily may not have been able to jump on our websites or call 211 or whatnot and get information. And it was a two-way street back and forth. It is a very powerful group. If you COAD or VOADs in your communities, if you have them, be talking to them. They're amazing at what they can do and bring to the table.
I'm going to come to the next question. I just want to add 15 seconds, which is COAD, VOAD. In some communities that have been heavily hit, they've created robust ones. In most communities that haven't been smacked in the face, it's a very loose organization. It's another area that is to actively engage, because it is an absolute nexus. We have gotten to the point where we've done grants with COAD and put funding into different areas for them to actually go and do preemptive outreach. We've taken COAD and we've created, gosh, now I'm going to go through them all. CERT, Citizen Emergency Response Teams. We also have organizations like North County Community Organizations Active in Disaster, which is a different kind of, not community organizations. Remind me what I'm saying. I scared it out of you. North County COPE. Community organizing to prepare for emergencies, right? So like you have all of these things, but these are not just names. These are people involved in them in our community. And that whole aspect of never waste a crisis is absolutely supreme here. There was a hand over here.
Right
in the
here.
back, sir. Yep.
This is Mary Ann
Oh, yeah.
Petrillo, West Business Development Center for Mendocino County. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's really amazing, and you've got a lot of lessons learned, and thank you for sharing that. My question really has to do with, even though we know how many disasters continue to befall us, you know that there are many businesses still not prepared.
Yeah.
No matter all the work you do, they're not ready for the next disaster. And now it's even worse because they can no longer get insurance.
Yeah.
So my question to you and to other government leaders is, what can we do to incentivize people to be more prepared? It's wonderful to have grants after the fact. We gave out $750,000 worth of grants to businesses throughout Mendocino County. But how can we incentivize and really prepare businesses in our community to be ready because the next disaster will come?
Thank you.
Yeah, so as the insurance guy, I totally get it. Yeah, especially Mendocino County. My company has an office in Ukiah, and it's brutal. But one thing I would say that we were unaware of when it comes to economic development and keeping businesses afloat, because there's things that are going to happen, right? A mom and pop may just shut down because, like, if you look at a grocery store near where Brad lives called Molesbury, their entire market left because it burnt down, right? Those are things you can't really help and prepare for. But we had a lot of businesses affected by renters without renter's insurance because they lost everything, and they were like, well, California's expensive, I'll move to Texas, I'll move to Seattle, I'll move wherever else. I got nothing anyways, so I got nothing to, I don't have to move anything. And they just started over. And that brutally hit, especially the hospitality industry, So I would say one thing is educating people on renter's insurance, which can tend to be very, very cheap, but because that'll keep workforce in place. For me, I had renter's insurance, and literally my payout in renter's insurance is what helped pay for my down payment for my house. And I'm one of the lucky ones. So for those of you that don't know, statistically, 27% of renters have renter's insurance. So as an insurance guy and an elected and as a fire survivor, I am huge with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different parts of this. In our disaster, 91% of homeowners had homeowners insurance. You think that 9% is really individuals who didn't have mortgages, so they owned their homes outright, whether they were rich or whether they just had used their retirement, like we ran into other people, to say, instead of investing in the market, I'm going to buy a house in Coffey Park for $600,000 and I'm going to rent it out, right? Or live there or whatever without this additional cost. And then as Jeff says, I think even though that's the number for nationwide in Coffey Park, we've seen an uptick since then. I think it was like 21% when FEMA gave us the numbers or whatever it was. So those individuals, I was in a government meeting and FEMA just looked at us and said, the toughest thing is that the renters, they're the ones most impacted by these events. And let's also say this gets to an equity issue, right? And let's not be afraid to use that word, equity, because one of the things that we've done out of all these disasters, we've created an Office of Equity. We've gotten into a lot of painful conversations. We have turned our local hazard mitigation plan per a state law into one that has cultural competency embedded into it. So you're not like bringing people into shelters and they refuse to get into those shelters. During our initial fires, we had undocumented individuals. We have quite an undocumented population here who didn't feel safe going into our shelters, and so you had encampments going up on the beach and out in Bodega Bay. All of these things we have put into planning for the future. And I will say one thing that I think resonates above all of this is that the most important thing you can do is you can go back to your community, and you don't have to be Chicken Little, but you definitely cannot be the one who just takes this information and goes back to your community. You have to ask either your supervisor or your mayor or to host a meeting. Or just, if that won't happen, do it on your own. Host a business resiliency roundtable. The kind of things that we had to deal with businesses for public safety power shutdowns to try and get businesses qualified to be able to get their electricity turned on, or even worse, during the Kincaid fire, to get their gas turned on, their natural gas. Like, there are so many things that are not discussed in your relationship on how that happens. So many business questions and decisions. So the reason I say that is it could sound exhausting, but I think one of the things that I admire about the individuals on the panel, and I think you can hear from me too, is that this is purpose. This is like, life, God, however you deem that, right in my face. This isn't just like first world problems. This is really important stuff. So I want to go. There was one other question, and then I want to wind us down with some final comments. Yes, sir.
Robert Meyer, Training Panel. I wanted to thank you guys because through the World Exchange Academy, thank you, Gerbach, we were able to learn the lessons
Through the what?
from the staging
Okay.
of what you did, the loading order of resources on a state and a federal level to find the gaps through the conversations and the presentations that you provided on how to establish your disaster plan, what was involved. The first days of where's the plan? Oh, it's there. Where are we supposed to meet? You're at the location you're supposed to meet. When you didn't really have the plans formalized, you've been able to share this message, and it's created an opportunity to replicate what I think is a successful plan. On the state level, I've really appreciated the opportunity to have the programs better aligned, to be able to more effectively engage the communities that are going through it in a 2-month, 6-month, a 1-year opportunity, so that the incentives and resources can be better layered. I hope we can improve that, but I really appreciate the work that you guys have done to share that story.
Okay, we're going to do some final comments for everyone here. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. Give 30 seconds to everybody, and then I'll finish it up with 15 seconds of my own. Jeff?
Be prepared, have a plan. Please go back and reach out to your local emergency manager, emergency services coordinator, have a conversation. How do you play into the big picture? Thanks.
It's going to sound trite, but start now. Start before.
Yeah, I would echo that. When Brad and I travel to some of these and talk to some of these individuals, they're like, oh, you know, in case there's a disaster, we have these community response groups. What was yours? And we're just like, well, we didn't have one. Yeah. So have one. And also, one last plug. If you need any recommendations in the city, let me know. Food, drink, whatever else. Thank you guys so much for being in Santa Rosa.
There's also some great restaurants in the unincorporated county, just a little north. Great grocery store named Molesbury. Sorry. Real quick, leadership. It's up to all of us to make sure we have the leaders, the right leaders at the right place. So when you need them, you've got them at the right time.
Thank you. And for my part, this is awesome. Use it. Come on. Do you know who your county health officer is for the next pandemic, if they're going to listen to you or they're going to just make willy-nilly decisions each and every week and change things? Do you know who your emergency manager is? Do you know what's going to happen when you evacuate 40% of your community, which is a whole different disaster, and what that means for businesses? Like, I thought when people came to us during the pandemic and in these other events and said like a $5,000 grant like was important, I thought that was just like not enough to be helpful. I was shocked to see how helpful these things are as opposed to what we talked about with like another loan. Thank you so much, Gerbach. We went a little bit over. Thank you so much. Pleasure.
Thank you for joining us today. To learn more about how your businesses can also prepare for business interruptions, whether caused by natural disasters or otherwise, please visit our website at outsmartdisaster.calosba.ca.gov.